Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
My first name is Tammy, T-A-M-M-Y. My last name is Talbas, that's T as in Texas, A-L, P as in Peter, A-S as in South.
And reason you are, why are you so angry to the point that you are sitting here in the middle of Lamar Boulevard tonight?
Julie and I have a different point of view. Julia thinks that Christine Blasey Ford was not believed. I think that everyone believes her, and they just don't care because she doesn't matter any more than I matter.
Do you have do you have a personal experience with assault, or is it just being a woman and speaking out and no one's believing, a woman?
For the whole time of the Me Too movement, I've been remembering things that I put away because I'm not a masochist and don't want to feel pain that I don't have to feel. When she came out and told her story, my college roommate called me and said, "Are you okay?" Because obviously she remembered. And of course then I remembered. Oh yeah, I remember that. I am sick of calling my senators and my representatives and leaving my heart into their voicemail and begging them to muster up the human decency to stop this madness, this celebration of cruelty and criminality. And it's not, patriarchy is such a mild word for the rape and abuse of women. It's too much.
A lot of women I've talked to, especially during the Me Too movement, but these past 2 weeks, hearing everyone talk about assault and harassment, they're talking about PTSD, living through every moment of their experience again. Can you kind of speak to that, the pain of that?
Yeah, my dreams have gotten weird. A lot of revenge dreams about the men in my past that have caused me harm, serious harm. When I spoke earlier, I was joking about wearing my dental trays today because I catch myself grinding and gritting my teeth. And I'm going to grind them down to dust if I don't stop it. I think a lot of times people confuse anger and agony. What you're seeing here is both. For the survivors, like Julia and I, there's agony, but there's also anger, because this doesn't have to be this way. If men and women were of good character, the behavior that's being elevated to the Supreme Court would never be acceptable. But at this point, power is more important than people, and so we are where we are. And I am where I am. I've never been arrested in my life. I think I'm about to be.
What's the strongest message that you want people to remember or take away from this?
You cannot check out on the process of politics. You cannot check out. You cannot step away, look away, pretend it doesn't matter. You have to vote every time. You have to get everyone you know to vote every time. Even if they show up and say, "I'm not sure how to vote on this particular issue," show up and vote on the things that you know and care about. Casting a partial ballot is better than not showing up at all. America's ideal was that the people would be the royal family and the electeds would be our royal servants. It has been flipped, and it's been flipped because the people have abdicated their royal family role and are letting our electeds run us. It shouldn't be that way. It cannot keep being that way.
It is Tuesday, the 9th of October of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That's right, folks. If you notice a little bit of a scratchy tone to my voice, or maybe kind of like a little low, scratchy, and sexy, I think I'm sporting a late summer cold, even though it's fall. Yeah, started feeling a little pumped yesterday. I don't think it's the flu, though it could be. A little touch of the flu, maybe. Got to be careful about that. But, yeah, I got a little bit under the weather, and I'm just pushing on. So if my voice cracks or does something untoward, that's the reason why. I'm dealing with some sort of bug. Well, speaking of things that are buggy, it looks like Kavanaugh was proven innocent. And how was that done? Well, Trump said he was. Now, he wasn't proven guilty either, but, who's counting? One of the most transparent, craven acts occurred in that swearing-in ceremony. And I hope that the other members of the court were taking note. Because, we see you. Yep. Well, they, meaning the Republicans, are going to be running on the great fear that if we happen to take over the House and the Senate, we're going to destroy America. Well, that's not true. Actually, we are going to save America. And if the Republican Party is completely destroyed, which I really hope it will be, but I doubt it. These institutional constructs are pretty hard to dismantle. I don't know if the Republican Party could become something else. Well, they have become something else. They become the Republican Party, which is the party of neo-Nazis, misogynists, rape apologists, actual rapists, and their fellow travelers. So, will they rename and rebrand? Will the Never-Trumpers and the more... This is the problem. When you say the more moderate Republicans, what does that mean? Because if you've got somebody who's really just to the right of Pol Pot, or, well, I don't know, maybe just to the right of Pinochet, a moderate isn't really that moderate, is it? But if these other Republicans form another party, what would they call it? And I know what I would call the party that the Republicans are now. Why don't we just call them the Wigged Out Party? Maybe they'll like it. Maybe they'll look at it as a benefit rather than a liability. Maybe. Well, what else is on the menu today? Up top, as we started here on the Bistro Cafe, that was a Texas Me Too activist explaining why she and others were blocking the Lamar Bridge in Austin, Texas yesterday. And one of the important points that she made was that you cannot check out of politics. Okay? It will still go on. Issues will impact you, even if you try to ignore it all. Pretend it doesn't exist, doesn't have anything to do with your life. It's just not true, okay? You cannot check out on politics. You just can't, which is disheartening when you talk to people and they have no idea what's going on. You know, they know that Trump is president, right? They know that. But they have no idea about Russia investigation. I don't know. This is just kind of weird to them. You know, they think it's a hoax if they do say anything about it. So I guess the propaganda's been working. But there's a lot of people that are out there who just hunkered down, going and doing their job and not considering the greater world around them and its impact on them. For instance, in 20 years, we could be fried to a crisp. Why is that not the top news story of the day? Why is that being ignored? We have a meteor coming our way. I guess Trump says, hey, we're not ever going to stop climate change, so why worry about it? And scientists say, yeah, actually, we could affect climate. Let's get to work. But Trump values money, not survival. Money is survival to him. And that may not be enough. Will it? On the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. University of Washington College Republicans flipped out and threatened to sue a local bar for refusing to host their pro-Kavanaugh kegger. They think that they have to be served. Really? Okay, we'll see about that. A Montana Tea Party leader is charged with distributing explosives, possessing illegal machine gun parts, and other weapons. Like grenades and little things like that. And the DeVos company is implicated in the new report on fishy communications between the Trump Organization server and the Russian Alpha Bank. And that's a big story, too. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the GOP is losing women in the battleground districts it needs the most. And more than 130 kids are still separated from their parents 74 days past the court-ordered deadline. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will notice a scroll there with links in which you can determine if you are registered to vote and to register to vote. We're about 28 days out now. So do what you have to do. There are many states where it's probably a little late to register right now. But there are other states that you can register. So find out if you are registered to vote. The other side is pulling out all the stops. They're taking you off the rolls. They're going to throw up roadblocks to prevent you from voting because they hate America and Americans. And we have to overcome these obstacles. So please, 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 make sure you're registered and make sure you vote. Okay? Please. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link, appropriate and grand way in which to engage Netroots Radio. Kelly Lincoln monitors that. Now, I have to tell you, she's working a lot these days, but she is diligent about monitoring the chat room. So please do go there. And do also check out her shows on Saturday. At the Table with Kelly Lincoln is at 3 p.m. on the West Coast. That's 6 p.m. on the East Coast. And then later on, she teams up with Ricky for the Round Table Roundhouse Power Hour, commanded by the both of them, beginning at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast. And it is a power hour. It is. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the contribute button, an integral part of this operation because we are unable to do this without you. And would you please become a Patreon to Netroots Radio? Just even if you can afford, I've said this many times already, but if you can afford a cup of coffee a month, can you buy Netroots Radio a cup of coffee each month? Just one cup of coffee. That is so helpful. That amount keeps the modem bills paid and the other infrastructure that we need to be able to fly under the radar and continue resisting because we pay our bills. You don't pay your bills, they might try to keep you from resisting. And we're camouflaged. So help us remain camouflaged by helping us pay the bills. Thank you for your generosity. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform. Thank you, Tom. Check us out over on Facebook. Kelly's been taking care of the Facebook and Facebook Live aspect. I sometimes do take care of some administrative things on Facebook, but follow us there too. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And that's a really integral part of the show, too, because this is a multimedia operation, and you get the whole gestalt. I know that's redundant, but you do. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Check us out over on Facebook. And you can pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, iTunes, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, I forgot to tell you, keep the Old Bay in the cupboard, just a little dash, a smidgen, even less than a dash, just a smidgen of hot Hungarian smoked paprika. That makes all the difference, okay? The Old Bay is good for a clam bake. Don't put it in the chowder, okay? All right. Brad Reed of Raw Story brings us this first offering here. The University of Washington's chapter of the College Republicans has threatened to sue a local bar because it refused to host an event they plan to celebrate for the confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And you ought to see the picture of these pasty, bloated boys. And they are white. Okay. Frat boys. Yeah. Local news station Kiro 7, Kiro 7, reports that Seattle bar Schulze's Bar and Grill told the college Republicans over the weekend that it would not host their planned Beers for Brett party on the grounds that it is a sports bar that does not endorse any particular political viewpoint. A group of 15 of the college Republicans went to the bar anyway to have drinks and were permitted to stay without incident. Despite this, the chapter is still considering a lawsuit against Schulze's for not wanting to serve as the official host of their celebration. I have some questions about this, and I'll bring them up at the end of this article. It's very disheartening just to see something like this would get shut down or be asked to be shut down for not any good reason, complained University of Washington College Republican President Chevy Swanson. He's at the University of Washington, and he can't even put a sentence together. Well, Trump does count on his very, very uneducated base, now doesn't he? This guy's an intellectual compared to the rest of them. However, and this is where I get a little confused, constitutional law expert Jeffrey Needle tells KIRO 7 that so long as Schulze's has a blanket policy of refusing to officially host all political events, it's very likely in the clear. They're not treating one ideology different from any other ideology, and they're not violating the statute. What statute is that? Because I'm a little confused. I thought the statute was that business owners have the right to refuse service to anyone that they deem they don't want to serve. This isn't like a gay couple coming in and asking for a birthday cake or a wedding cake. We're not talking about that. So I don't quite understand. Does Seattle have a statute that says that a private business has to host political events? They have to? No, business is business. When I was running the Bison Brewing Company back in the day, we told lots of groups, no, we're not hosting you. And I suppose that maybe Schulze's made a mistake when they said that they weren't going to allow them to come into their barn and officially be hosted because they don't side with any political side? No. I suppose one could just lie and say, yeah, it's not available that day or that weekend. Or you could say, I don't know. I've seen what happens when a bunch of you guys come in here and we have a bunch of problems. Of course, they didn't have any problems when, 15 or so showed up at the bar anyway for drinks. See, it's not about being at the bar and having drinks and celebrating Kavanaugh's ascension to the Supreme Court. That's not what this is about. This is now about owning the libs. It is about grievance. It is about revenge. And it's also about making up a story to prove your point. Because these guys are not about celebrating Kavanaugh's ascension to the Supreme Court. No. They want to put their hands over the mouth of anyone who does not consent. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article out of Raw Story by the great Sarah K. Burris. And I should add, Sarah K. Burris is often on Irreverent Testimony, and that's on Saturdays, so check out that show. She's got some great insight, and that's why we call her here at Networks Radio the great Sarah K. Burris. Montana Tea Party leader Bruce Boone Wan, or is that Wan, has been charged with illegal possession of firearms as well as the distribution of an improvised grenade and dynamite. He improvised the dynamite too? Wow, he's a chemist. According to the Missoulian, Wan had a short barrel rifle, stolen shotgun, and 2 silencers, among other things. Having those weapons alone could land him in federal prison for 30 years. With the addition of the explosives, Wan could get as much as 80 years in prison. I think Trump would consider this a very fine person, though. Wan was active in the Tea Party movement during the 2010 election cycle. He was spotted wearing a Guy Fawkes mask from the film V for Vendetta outside of a mall with a handgun stuck in his belt. He held a sign saying, "Nazi checkpoint ahead." Oh, wow, how nice. According to the Flathead Beacon, Wan explained that he hadn't made the sign for the Tea Party protest, but instead regularly used it to warn motorists when law enforcement set up checkpoints, which he believes represent unreasonable searches and seizures. Well, a lot of people who are drunk and driving don't want to be pulled over by those checks. I will argue that those sobriety checks are unconstitutional, I should add. But for the safety of the greater community, we sometimes will say, your rights end where my life begins. Because if your inebriated state causes you to, lose control and kill someone, maybe you shouldn't have the right to just willy-nilly drive about without at least getting checked. I'm not a supporter of the Nazis. I just see where we're going, Wan told the paper. We're going back to Nazi Germany and fascism with government running corporations. Well, I will say that this is during the Obama administration. And remember when they called Obama a Nazi? At the same time, they were calling him a Kenyan socialist. I'm trying to figure out how that works. Well, Wan pleaded not guilty to these weapons and explosive charges and was given a federal public defender because, hey, government's taken over everything. Travis Getty's also a bra story brings us this final offering here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Bistro Cafe. Cybersecurity experts found evidence of suspicious communications between a Trump Organization computer and a Russian bank in the summer of 2016, and they also noticed a link to Betsy DeVos and her family. The researchers set out to find whether Russian hackers had also targeted Republicans after the news broke that the DNC had been hacked, and their investigations surprised them, reported the New Yorker. The group found Alpha Bank computers were repeatedly looking up the address of a Trump server located in Lititz, Pennsylvania, nearly every day in the summer of 2016. And computer scientists who examined the contacts believe they were intentional attempts at human communication. The timing of the communication was not random, and it wasn't regular periodic, said one researcher, identified only as Paul. It was a better match for human activity. Alpha Bank looked up the Trump Organization's domain more than 2,000 times between May and September of 2016. Only one other entity, Spectrum Health, reached out to the Trump Organization's domain with any frequency during that same period. The Grand Rapids, Michigan-based company is closely linked to the DeVos family, Spectrum Health, that is. Richard DeVos, Jr., husband of Education Secretary Betsy, is chairman of the board and named one of its hospitals after his mother. The Education Secretary's brother, Eric Prince, has been investigated by Special Counsel Mueller for his contacts with Russia during the election and his efforts to set up a back channel between Trump and the Kremlin. Would a server at a bank be a back channel to have human communication? You sometimes wonder. In this reporter's opinion, the Trump Organization's domain was set up to send mass marketing emails, and the researchers were puzzled why DeVos's Spectrum Health was reaching out to a server that didn't appear to do anything. After analyzing the data, they concluded the link-ups were a covert communications channel. The Trump Organization, Alpha Bank, and Spectrum Health have repeatedly denied any contacts, but FBI agents visited the offices where that server was housed in March of 2017. The server was housed at a company called ListTrack, which helped blast out emails offering spa treatments in Las Vegas weekends, and its CEO says he gave agents everything they requested. The Trump Organization domain, mail1.trump-email.com, stopped working on September 23rd of 2016, 2 days after a New York Times reporter gave potential evidence of communications to BGR, a Washington lobbying firm that worked for Alpha Bank, while they were working on an article. The newspaper had not yet contacted Trump or his campaign about the communications. The researchers believe an Alpha Bank representative had contacted the Trump Organization, which shut down that domain and set up another one under a new address. Alpha Bank servers continued searching for the Trump domain for 4 more days, researchers said. 10 minutes after the last attempt, one of Alpha Bank's servers looked up another domain, which researchers say had been configured to lead to the old Trump Organization server. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
This year's prize is about harnessing the power of evolution. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has today decided to award 2018 Nobel Prize in Chemistry with 1/2 to Francis H. Arnold for the directed evolution of enzymes, and the other half jointly to George P. Smith and Gregory P. Winter for the phage display of peptides and antibodies.
Joran Hansen, Secretary General of the Academy, earlier today.
Frances H. Arnold was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the United States in 1956, and she's currently at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, in Pasadena in the Los Angeles area. George P. Smith was born in 1941 in Norwalk, Connecticut, and he's currently at the University of Missouri in Columbia in the United States. Sir Gregory P. Winter was born in 1951 in Leicester in the United Kingdom, and he is at the Laboratory of Molecular Biology and the University of Cambridge in England. So with that, I'd like to ask Claes Gustafsson, Chairman of the Nobel Committee, to make some remarks about the prize. Claes.
So thank you, Göran. So this year's prize in chemistry rewards a revolution based on evolution. Our laureates have applied the principles of Darwin in the test tubes and used this approach to develop new types of chemicals for the greatest benefit of humankind. For thousands of years, we humans have used selected breeding to create animals and plants with properties that have been useful for us. This year's Nobel laureates have taken the next step. They have used the molecular understanding that we today have of the evolutionary process and recreated the process in their laboratories, in their test tubes. This work has led to the creation of proteins with new enzymatic activities, able to catalyze useful chemical reactions. In addition, with a method called phage display, they have also evolved proteins with new binding properties, such as antibodies, that can be used to treat disease. In their laboratories, our laureates this year have been able to direct evolution, to steer it, which has led to new chemical tools that can be used in everything from environmentally friendly detergents to the creation of new biofuels and pharmaceuticals.
For an in-depth listen about the 2018 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, look for the Scientific American Science Talk podcast later today. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. Cholesterol management. And S. Smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Listen, can you hear it? Listen to the eerie sound of silence from the trumpeteers and congressional Republicans who so loudly cheered themselves just a year ago for bestowing a $1 trillion tax giveaway on corporate elites. They told us they did it not for the rich, but to help the middle class and poor families. How would enriching the already rich benefit the rest of us? Trickle-down economics 101, said Trump and company, explaining that giving more money to elites would spark, quote, an immediate jump in wage growth, because CEOs would use their bonanza to reward workers for their productivity. The White House even got specific, declaring that average pay would jump as much as $9,000 per person. But here we are in the thick of the 2018 congressional elections, and shh, silence. Not a single lawmaker who voted for this grand ideological promise is mentioning it, much less running ads touting their role and hammering the plan into law. Why so shy? Because their trickle-down giveaway was a crude hoax from the start. CEOs spent the GOP's trillion-dollar boondoggle on lifting their own exorbitant pay. Moneyed elites got the gold mine, working families got the shaft. Far from a $9,000 income boost, the workaday majority of Americans now find that their hourly earnings are lower than a year ago. But who cares? Being a trumpeter Republican means never admitting your lies and never apologizing. Steve Mnuchin, a former Wall Street banker who's now the Treasury Secretary, is a perfect example of a blasé, ethically challenged Trump huckster. He recently shrugged off the failure of the bloated tax cut to raise working people's income. Wages are going up on some people, he declared disingenuously. This is Jim Hightower saying, yeah, for multimillionaires like him. Yet he wonders why most Americans despise him and his ilk.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Although Brett Kavanaugh was sworn in as the nation's 114th Supreme Court Justice in a private ceremony at the court on Saturday night, Trump held a ceremonial swearing-in Monday at the White House. The president actually began his statement with an apology to Kavanaugh and his family.
On behalf of our nation, I want to apologize to Brett and the entire Kavanaugh family for the terrible pain and suffering you have been forced to endure. Those who step forward to serve our country deserve a fair and dignified evaluation, not a campaign of political and personal destruction based on lies and deception. What happened to the Kavanaugh family violates every notion of fairness, decency, and due process. Our country, a man or a woman, must always be presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. And with that, I must state that you, sir, under historic scrutiny, were proven innocent. Thank you.
No, Kavanaugh was not proven innocent. Kavanaugh, the man who said, quote, what goes around comes around as part of a sneering counterattack aimed at Democratic members of the Senate Judiciary Committee during his hearing, tried to sing a different tune Monday night.
The Supreme Court is an institution of law. It is not a partisan or political institution. The justices do not sit on opposite sides of an aisle. We do not caucus in separate rooms. The Supreme Court is a team of 9. And I will always be a team player on the team of 9.
He then went on to thank all the Republicans who helped him get there. At a campaign rally in Orlando Monday evening, Donald Trump defended Kavanaugh and called his accusers evil.
He's a great person, and it was very, very unfair what happened to him. False charges, false accusations, horrible statements that were totally untrue, that he knew nothing about. Frankly, terms that he probably never heard in his life. He was this, he was that. He never even heard of these terms. It was a disgraceful situation brought about by people that are evil. And he toughed it out. We all toughed it out together. And I have to thank the Republican senators that fought so hard for this, because it wasn't easy. and it was a great honor to be involved in this situation. A lot of people would have said, oh, let's give it up, let's go a different direction. We don't give up. You don't give up. We don't give up. Just don't do it. He's going to be a great Supreme Court justice. Watch. A great one.
I don't usually report on things pop stars say in this report, but today we'll make an exception. Taylor Swift jumped into the political fray on Instagram over the weekend. She said that she's been reluctant to publicly voice her political opinions, but the last 2 years have changed that. Her statement read in part, quote, I believe in the fight for LGBTQ rights and that any form of discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender is wrong. I believe that the systemic racism we still see in this country towards people of color is terrifying, sickening, and prevalent. I cannot vote for someone who will not be willing to fight for dignity for all Americans, no matter their skin color, gender, or who they love. Running for Senate in the state of Tennessee is a woman named Marsha Blackburn. As much as I have in the past and would like to continue voting for women in office, I cannot support Marsha Blackburn. Her voting record in Congress appalls and terrifies me. She voted against equal pay for women. She voted against the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which attempts to protect women from domestic violence, stalking, and date rape. She believes businesses have a right to refuse service to gay couples. She also believes they should not have the right to marry. These are not my Tennessee values. I will be voting for Phil Bredesen for Senate and Jim Cooper for House of Representatives. Please, please educate yourself on the candidates running in your state and vote based on who most closely represents your values. Swift ended that lengthy post by reminding her fans that Tuesday, October 9th is the last day to register to vote in Tennessee and urged them to go to vote.org to find all the info. Of course, Trump has an opinion.
Taylor Swift jumping into politics. What do you have to say to her? And what did she say? She said she wants people to vote for Democrats. And not Marsha Blackburn, especially. You know, well, Marsha Blackburn is doing a very good job in Tennessee. She's leading now substantially, which she should. She's a tremendous woman. I'm sure Taylor Swift has nothing or doesn't know anything about her. And let's say that I like Taylor's music about 25% less now, okay? Thank you.
Hurricane Michael strengthened Tuesday morning to a Category 2 and will continue to strengthen significantly to become a dangerous Category 3 storm by the time it's expected to hit the Gulf Coast on Wednesday morning. More than 100 counties from Mobile, Alabama, through the Florida Panhandle are under a state of emergency, and 1,250 National Guardsmen have been activated for duty. After slamming the Gulf Coast, Michael is expected to slog through Georgia and into the Carolinas, parts of which are still reeling from Hurricane Florence. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your world in 2 minutes. North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un has reportedly offered to let international inspectors visit his country's former nuclear testing grounds. That's according to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo after a brief visit with Kim in North Korea on Sunday. North Korea detonated explosives outside of its underground Pyongyari complex in May before a contingent of the foreign press, but no nuclear scientists or engineers were present to inspect whether the massive nuclear testing site had been rendered unusable. Pompeo told reporters after his visit to Pyongyang that, quote, as soon as we get it logistically worked out, Chairman Kim said he's ready to allow them to come in, and there's a lot of logistics that will be required to execute that. Pompeo said his visit, his fourth to North Korea this year, achieved significant progress on a range of issues, but for now, the public will have to take him at his word. Pompeo offered no details as to when inspectors might be allowed to North Korea or whom might be allowed. He also sidestepped a question as to whether North Korea was still committed to dismantling its Yongbyon nuclear reactor, a promise made by Kim at a separate summit with South Korea's president last month. Another key goal of Pompeo's trip was to continue preparations for a second meeting between Kim and Trump. Pompeo described the U.S. and North Korea as getting pretty close to announcing a date and place for the meeting, but said it was hard to know when such an announcement might come. American officials haven't said where a second meeting might occur, though North Korean officials have signaled their desire for Trump to visit the North Korean capital of Pyongyang. Timing is a separate issue. While the White House originally desired a second summit in the weeks leading up to November's midterm elections, that date is now drawing near and Kim's calendar is filling up. He's expected to visit Russia in the coming weeks for a one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Remember, just a smidgen of hot smoked Hungarian paprika. Oh my, makes all the difference. Well, we began weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees. Had an overnight low in the mid to low 50s, and it's starting to warm up a bit. We will be going to about 65, 66 degrees today, about the same as it was yesterday. We will have cloudy conditions, small chance of rain for the next 3 or 4 days, which we would like if it turns into a much greater chance of rain. It actually rains. Winds are out of the east-northeast at light and variable, about 1 mile per hour. We are under cloudy conditions. Winds will remain light and variable out of the east-northeast for the next foreseeable future, at least for the next few days. Indeed. Ragweed pollen remains high. The air quality index is good, and it dropped quite a bit from what it was yesterday. It's down to 9 parts per million. And our full-time daytime UV index is moderate at 4. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.87 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles. And that relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 69 degrees and sunny. Paris is 73 and sunny. Rome is 75, partly cloudy, with electrical storm advisory, which could knock out their electrical grid. Kiev is 48 and cloudy. Kabul is 55 degrees and fair. I don't think they get married or have wedding parties on Tuesdays, but if you do, don't go out. It could be raining drone bombs. Heavy. Yeah, a heavy downfall. Okay. Hong Kong is 75 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 69 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 65 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and clear. And they do have a small craft advisory for heavy winds on the bay and offshore, so do take care. And New York is 71 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere in their property, and these people positively live around the world. Bullard of Share Blue Media brings us this first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Hey, did you know the Democrats lead in nearly 70 districts that favored Republicans in 2016? Well, you do now. Polls show that white college-educated women in battleground House districts are abandoning the Republican Party just weeks before the midterm elections. And a new survey of 69 House districts that are in play this November, a Washington Post poll finds Democrats boast a 4-point advantage. By comparison, in 2016, Republicans enjoyed a 15-point advantage in those same districts. Today, Republicans control 63 of those battleground House seats nationwide, Democrats just 6, yet likely voters are leaning Democratic this cycle. Democrats need to win a net gain of 23 seats to take control of the House next year. Leading the Democratic surge are women voters. You know, that violent mob. I suppose that a limp dick white guy who relies upon Cialis and Viagra and other enhancing products to be able to, get it up, would find women very frightening. Very frightening. Women are driving Democratic support in the battleground districts, favoring the party's candidates by 54% to 40%. Men in these same districts favor Republicans by 51% to 46%. I'm down there in that 46% because I don't favor them at all. The gap is even more pronounced among those with college degrees. Really. White women with college degrees back the Democratic candidate in their districts by 62% to 35%. Non-white voters continue to back Democrats overwhelmingly, 64 to 29%. The Post notes, non-white voters make up a smaller portion of the population in battleground districts than they do nationally, and that's kind of by design. You got a state like Wyoming, say, 2 senators. They represent, about 560,000, 650,000 people in Wyoming. And you got 2 senators in California, and they represent what is it? 40-some, 60, 67 million? It's some exorbitant amount. So, yeah. Of course, we're talking House districts here, but still, we need to take the Senate, too. And then maybe we can dismantle it. I would. The poll was conducted between September 19th and October 5th. That means portions of the survey took place against the backdrop of the Kavanaugh controversy as voters watched the Republican Party dismiss allegations of sexual assault against the nominee and then, in some cases, openly taunting sexual assault victims because they're just a bunch of violent mobs. It's just mobs. The findings from the Washington Post Battleground poll mirror similar results regarding the sprint away from the GOP among women voters on the eve of this year's elections. Overall, 55% of white college graduates say they prefer the Democratic candidate in their district, compared with 42% who support the GOP nominee. That's 55 to 42. Unlike generic polls for House races that ask respondents if they plan on voting Democratic or Republican in November, the Post-Battleground poll specifically asked callers in their districts if they are planning on voting for the local Republican or Democratic nominee and mentioned the candidates by name. The margin of error for the poll is just 2 points. Note that Trump is clearly motivating Democratic-leaning voters in the battleground districts. For 40% of them, Trump is identified as the single most important issue this campaign. By contrast, only 15% of Republican voters see Trump as the top issue looming this year. So it looks like November will be a referendum on Trump.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
And Desai Martin, also of Share Blue Media, brings us this final offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Trump's baby jails are not headline news anymore, but dozens of children kidnapped by the Trump administration are still cruelly separated from their families. According to the most recent court filing, 136 children, including 3 children under the age of 5, still have not been reunited with their parents. The Trump administration effectively kidnapped more than 2,650 immigrant children as a result of Trump's zero-tolerance policy. Trump's officials knew that federally prosecuting every single potentially unlawful border crossing would mean separating parents even from very young children, but they did it anyway, with no system in place to reunite families at a later date, because these are not people. They're animals, and they have no rights, and they probably shouldn't even exist. They're in our way. What a burdensome, God damn them, coming across our borders. Is it immigration or an invasion? In order to pay the costs associated with unnecessarily detaining thousands of children, the Trump administration cut back on funding for vital programs such as cancer research and disaster relief, because kicking little babies in the teeth and then grinding their faces into the mud with your blue steel-toed boot is much more important than, trying to find a cure for cancer or try to save people from being blown off the face of the earth by a hurricane. Initially, Trump officials lied to the public by claiming there was no family separation policy at all. But then, the nation was gripped by horrifying stories of children being held in cages waiting for their mothers and fathers, and parents frantically trying to get any information on the whereabouts of their children. Together, with rallies and protests, thousands of Americans nationwide declared that families belong together and demanded an end to Trump's unconscionable practice. Now, rallies and protests, that's considered to be the mob. Voters. Ever since a federal judge ordered that children be reunited with their families, the Trump administration has whined and dragged its feet. The courts initially imposed a July 26th deadline, which the Trump administration failed to meet because obviously the court doesn't have a zero-tolerance policy when people violate their court order. I always thought they did, but silly me. Well, Trump's cruel plan was intended to deter immigrants from coming to the U.S., even if they were seeking asylum. And, are we America anymore? Well, some of us are. And we're going to take it back and make it the beacon on the hill that somebody said we ought to be. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Networks Radio will broadcast on with all that breaking news. We're going to visit with you tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Networks Radio all day and all night for all that breaking news as it breaks. And we'll visit with you tomorrow right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pas fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je près du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus d'être tendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.